You ever watch a guy wrestle with fate on the turf, knowing deep down it might be the last time he ever wears that uniform? You ever catch yourself wondering if a single misstep could be a final goodbye, a closing chapter nobody wanted to write, but everyone feared? Picture this: a young receiver on the cusp, fighting tooth and nail through a preseason storm in Ohio, only to stumble on a single punt that turned a hopeful night into a nightmare for Detroit's fragile dreams. Light up the comments if your heart is still raw for the Lions, because this isn't just another preseason gaffe. This could be Jacoby Keeney-James' swan song in Honolulu Blue, the moment where the brutal, unforgiving reality of the NFL caught up with a kid chasing a chance. Behind closed doors, whispers have been swirling. The undrafted free agent, who arrived with nothing but a spark and an underdog's hunger, may have just played his last snap for Detroit. Executives are holding their breath, coaches biting their nails, while the city waits to see if loyalty means anything when the stakes so mercilessly shift. Keeney-James' muff punt wasn't just a drop chance. It was a flashing neon sign, screaming that the margin for error in this Lions camp is vanishing faster than hope on a cold December afternoon at Ford Field. This isn't drama manufactured out of nowhere. It's the raw aftermath of a 3-4-7 shellacking against the Chargers. A game where the young bloods were supposed to shine, to carve out a future beyond Detroit's long drought. Instead, it felt like a collapse, the kind that reminds us why the Hall of Fame game is a crucible, a pressure cooker exposing every tiny crack in this team's foundation. And for Jacoby, that muff wasn't just a mistake. It was a symbol. The cruel truth that in the league of unforgiving, high-stakes chess, one slip can mean exile. This city, this franchise, we've stared heartbreak in the eyes since '91, battled through decades of torment and dashed hopes. But what's worse than a loss is the slow disintegration of dreams. Dreams like those Jacoby Keeney-James carried into that stadium like a torch. From the ashes of Caldwell's ghost to the tentative rebirth under the new regime, Detroit has learned to be cautiously optimistic, to cherish every glimmer of promise, because the fall is always ruthless and swift. But what if this was Jacoby's last dance on the Detroit stage? What if his exit signals something larger, a brutal culling during a rebuilding phase that leaves wounds where hope once lived? What if, in the silence that follows his departure, the ripple ignites a chaotic shift in the team's chemistry and trajectory? Detroit fans, can you handle the weight of that possibility? Can we bear to say goodbye to a fighter who never got the chance to fully bloom? The cruel irony is that Keeney-James' mistake came at a moment when the Lions desperately needed noise, energy, a spark to ignite the offense and rally this city. Instead, that single muff put the Chargers deep in Lions territory, opening floodgates to more misery, more questions about depth, about trust, about whether this team can ever hold on to its fleeting moments. And the streets of Detroit know too well that in this league, mercy is rare. The unforgiving spotlight of preseason turns hopeful hopefuls into ghosts overnight. There's a knife-edge tension here between progress and purge. Between what could have been and what's too late. Because if Jacoby Keeney-James gets cut, if this young man's journey in Detroit ends with that fumble, it begs the chilling question: who's next on the chopping block as this franchise fights to find its soul? Will the coaches gamble on experience or double down on youth, pushing harder, demanding more from those left standing? This moment hangs over us like a storm cloud, thick, dark, and ripe with possibility or despair. And if this domino falls, you won't believe whose fate unravels right behind it. Detroit is a city of fighters, built from the grit of those who refuse to surrender, but even warriors bleed. And now the fuse is lit. All that's left is to wait for the explosion, unleash the fury. Detroit, it's do or die in these final seconds of our patience, because this ain't just football anymore. It's salvation or damnation, and right now we're standing on the edge of obliteration. The ghosts of Ford Field's haunted history are whispering louder than ever. The disasters of the 0-16 nightmare, the heartbreak of Calvin Johnson walking, Away with tears in his eyes, the echoes of Barry Sanders' silent protest against a league that never quite gave us our due. Our locker rooms are thick with tension, players whispering about trust, coaches wrestling with decisions that could rewrite futures overnight, front offices weighing the weight of loyalty versus ruthlessness in a game that devours those who hesitate. And what if Jacoby Keeney James' fumble isn't just a fluke? What if it's a sign that the Lions' fragile experiment is cracking beneath the surface? That this team's breath might be our last? I can see it now, rivals chuckling in their film rooms, clutching close to their hearts that cold, hard truth. Detroit's either about to rise from the ashes or spiral into another cycle of despair, the kind that crushes young dreams like Jacoby's. In a stolen second, this city has been battered, and battered again, yet still refuses to kneel. Remember Jim Caldwell's firing after the playoff heartbreak, the bounce back of last season's grit, the fiery hope in Goff's eyes. Everything hangs on a thread tighter than ever, and this moment right here could be the final blow or the spark of some impossible resurrection. Because history isn't kind to us. Yeah, we've seen what losing looks like. With those gut-wrenching games that slipped away in the fourth quarter, the nightmares of being outgunned, outmanned at crucial moments. But the truth is, every scar, every tear, every failure, those are the fuel for the fire. The reason why Detroit's fighters refused to fully fade into oblivion. When Barry walked away, it felt like the earth shifted. When Johnson retired early, it was like a city's heartbeat skipped a beat. Yet still, we hold on, rebuild, strap our hopes onto rookies, desperate for a sliver of light in this darkness. But what if this week's tragedy, the muff, the fumble, was the last straw? What if that single unforgivable moment gets us cut loose from what little stability we fought so hard for? We all know the stakes. Every game is life or death. And the front office is eyeing every name on that roster like a predator stalking its prey. Is loyalty enough? Or does every man get scrutinized harder than ever? And whispers in the shadows talk of potential upheaval, of players who might not survive the purge, of coaches who might bet the house on youth even if it means risking everything. It's desperation, fueled by years of heartbreak, yet a fierce hope still clings because Detroit is built on resilience, on a grit that refuses to die, even when the odds stack higher than the Renaissance Center. For every heartbreak, there's been a comeback, and every scar has a story. Think about the wild card shockers, the nail-biting playoff clashes, the last-minute escapes that kept us dreaming. But the ghosts of past failures loom large now, whispering that maybe the time for miracles has passed, that maybe Jacoby's misstep is the harbinger of everything to crumble. Or maybe, just maybe, his mistake is the ignition for something truly legendary. Could this be the moment when Detroit finally turns the tide? Or are we doomed to repeat the cruel cycle once again? With another young warrior pushed to the brink, another chapter of agony closing in? The line between hope and despair is razor thin. And as we watch the fallout unfold, every heart in this city pounds with a primal fury, the call to fight harder, dig deeper, refuse to surrender. And the question remains, looming larger than ever, will Detroit rise from this wreckage, or is this final act, the moment that seals our fate, already written in the stars, waiting for us to choose which path to take next?